Well, still on mining, Australia's vast reserves of critical minerals are now being appreciated, with state governments committed to mining them in New South Wales, WA and Queensland. But experts say that to really bring the profits home, we need to set up local industries around our resources, industries like electric vehicles and battery manufacturing. Rick Valenta is the Deputy Director of the Sustainable Minerals Institute at the University of Queensland, and he says there are huge markets that Australia's missing out on.
The mining market in rare earths, if you look at the value of all the rare earths that are produced, it's about $4 billion, and Australia has 10% of that. And then if you look at the stage where you're producing metal, the market is $40 billion, and Australia's share of that is zero. And then when you go to rare earth components, magnets that go into electric motors or other similar things, that market is $400 billion. Australia's share of that is zero. And then you finally go to the product, and the market for that's $4 trillion. Australia's share of that is zero.
Gail Broadbent is a postgrad researcher into electric vehicle uptake and policy at the University of New South Wales. She says instead of digging up our critical minerals and shipping them out, there's potential for Australia to stand up an EV industry.
If we've got the right minerals for battery production, and we do, then all these rare earths and lithium and cobalt and those sort of things are not value-adding for Australian people. I think we need to look at it from end to end. You know, there's an opportunity to not only reignite the car-making industry, but making it more sustainable, and then having battery recycling plants here in Australia as well, because as we move on and we're electrifying everything, batteries are going to become more important. And so there's a real opportunity here for us to create end-to-end industry that is circular economy things.
Yeah, and the federal government is doing this whole critical minerals push, and obviously that's important for the electric vehicle industry as well. You mentioned that our automotive manufacturing closed down not that long ago, but what's the demand for EVs like in Australia right now?
It's growing, and there's so much demand, in fact, that people have to wait months and months before they can actually buy one.
So does Australia have any kind of federal policy or measures in place to enable the country to start moving towards electric vehicles?
Well, they produced this thing called the Future Fuels and Vehicle Strategy, which they put out in November last year. And there's a few sort of odds and sods of things they said that they will do to encourage it, but it's so minimal, it's almost laughable. So there's no plan at the moment for an electric vehicle strategy at all. All it is just, we'll throw a little bit of money here and there that makes it look like we're doing something, but they're not really. So you need to develop a plan of how you're going to do that.
Cobalt Blue owns a mine out in Broken Hill that's looking to start operations in about 4 years. Joel Crane is their investment relations manager, and he says his company would welcome domestic manufacturing in this country.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not much manufacturing of those materials in Australia yet. We are hoping to be part of the beginnings of that industry, and we encourage anyone who is willing to invest in that part of the battery supply chain. We're really the cathode part of it. There isn't any yet, but it really makes sense that there should be, particularly in mining hubs such as in Western Australia, where there's lots of nickel and cobalt associated with that.
Do you mean that there's no Australian manufacturers of EV batteries?
No, not in any large scale. No, there's a few sort of in development. There's the FBI program out in Perth, which is government-sponsored, trying to put together a domestic Australian battery, but no, there is no battery production in Australia.
Would it be easier for a company like Cobalt Blue if you were supplying domestic manufacturers than having to go overseas?
Absolutely, that's the dream, and particularly going forward, given the scrutiny of ESG requirements by any manufacturing company, the fact that we have to take our material and put it onto a boat obviously increases our environmental footprint. But if we were able to just put that on a rail and slip it down a line only a few hundred kilometers away as opposed to several thousand, we would certainly welcome that. By 2040, most vehicles will be electric. So unless we develop that industry, we'll be importing all of that material, all those batteries. As you know, Australia used to be a major manufacturer of automobiles, and now we manufacture zero. I think now would be a good time, and the sooner the better, if we're going to revive that industry while the know-how in terms of the workers themselves and some of the physical infrastructure remain in place. It just makes so much sense, given we have all the materials, particularly for the batteries themselves.
Alexandra Kelly is Policy Manager at the Electric Vehicle Council. She says for an EV industry to take off in Australia, the federal government needs to implement a national strategy.
To see a passenger vehicle manufacturing industry grow in Australia, we would really need to see more consumers purchasing electric vehicles. That would attract investment for foreign manufacturers to set up shop in Australia. But what we're lacking at the moment is a national electric vehicle strategy that is incentivising manufacturers to bring vehicles to the market.
Talking about the change needed in manufacturing here in Australia in regards to electric vehicles and batteries, Alexandra Kelly is from the Electric Vehicle Council. She was ending that report by Hannah Joes.